I wish I would have known starting out in photography. How's it going, guys? It's your friend Tony. I'm back with another easy tutorial on things I wish I would have known starting out in photography. Now, before we get too far into this video, I just wanted to say thank you for the success of that last video. I was excited and shocked at how many views that video had. The comments that it had, the reactions that it had. I had some really good feedback from people, and that's all in part thanks to you guys. I'm very thankful for that. I'm grateful for it as well. But to continue on with this video, this is just going to be an easy tutorial on the ways I edit my photos in Lightroom. This is stuff that I wish I would have known when I was starting out in photography, and especially with the editing process. These are tips and tricks that I have had to learn over the years on my own. Some of it I did YouTube, I'm guilty of that, but a lot of it was things I had to learn on my own, and I also was taught it by a professor that I had at Weber State University in a photography class that I had. So this is really just meant to get your feet wet into photo editing and the process that it takes. Now, I know that when people hear the terminology or the talk of photo editing, some people get turned off from it. They don't want to really talk about it. And that's understandable, because photo editing can be stressful, it can be strenuous, it can be frustrating, but it can also be fun, enjoyable, and exciting at the same time, because you're able to see the creation that you envisioned in your mind come to life. And so this is, again, just an easy tutorial of Lightroom, of tips and tricks that I wish I would have known starting out in photography. Especially, this will be helpful to those up and coming photographers and those who are just wanting to kind of improve their photo editing skills. So without further ado, let's get started. Here we go. Photo. I know that from experience, so trust me, it won't. So after that, I come over here to the profile color option. You have a few different options. You have this one, monochrome. You can even browse, but I just use color, and then I click on this 4 squares icon, and in here you have 3 different categories. You have the all of them, which shows both the color and the monochrome, or black and white as some refer to it as. You have the color option, which is, it speaks for itself, and then the black and white option. I don't use this option as much because I don't edit many of my photos in black and white, but for those who do use it, this might be helpful for you just to have the black and white options available. So let's come back over here to the all of them category, and you'll notice at the very beginning it has the basic, which is, color. There's the monochrome. This is the very basic color and monochrome. Continuing on, you have the artistic, which has 8 different options for you to use for your photos. If you're wanting your photos to look more artistic, this might be your option, your best bet. I don't use as much. I have used this one before, and it works out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it when I've used it in the past. But continuing on, black and white, you have 17 different options if you're really just wanting to get that black and white feel. You have quite a few different varieties that you can use for it. I don't use this section as much, but continuing on, you have the modern section, which is the main section that I use, and it's my go-to section, honestly. It has 10 different options. And then continuing on, you have vintage, which is 10 different options for you. Again, if you want your photos to look more vintage-like, this is your section. But let's go back here to the modern section. I usually go and click on, I usually use modern 7. And from there, we'll close that. You can adjust it. You can do more or you can do less. I usually leave it in between both of them at the preset, which is 100. But let's say if you're looking at this family, and you think there needs more color in their skin. Well, temperature could help you out with that. I usually go about 8 or 9. So we'll go 9 this time. And so you can see that it's already brought some more color into their skin, more color into his red hair, and even some more color into their ties and the butterflies on her dress. From here, you can decrease or increase the exposure. So yeah, again, decrease, increase. But you don't want to increase it too much because otherwise it just looks blown out. You don't want to decrease it because you can't see them at all. So if you wanted to use the increase, I would use it very cautiously. We'll just leave it right there at 25. And then highlights, let's say if you wanted some more highlights in the background or some more shadows in the background or such, these two options would help you out with that. But let's say if you're editing this photo, you feel like the white shirts could be more white, then that could help you in that. And then the blacks would be for like the black slacks or the black on her dress, excuse me. But I usually just ignore this whole section just because I usually try to make sure my photos are pretty well lit anyway. From here, I come down here to presence, and I usually go to clarity, and again 8 or 9. 9 at the most is really what I choose. That's just a personal preference. And dehaze is where if you feel like the photo may be a little bit more hazy, or if you can dehaze it. So we can even dehaze this a little bit. We'll go about, say, 10. So I mean that looks pretty decent. But again, after that we go vibrance. You gotta make those colors look a little bit more vibrant. So again, I usually do 8 or 9. And then saturation is more along the lines like, let's say if you're looking at this photo and you feel like the colors in the photo could have more life to them, then saturation could be your buddy, so to speak. So we can do that, but again, you can either increase or decrease this. I know that I've seen photos that were decreased all the way like that, and this looks cool. This looks really cool. I've seen photos done like this. I've even done photos like this before, but I would suggest only doing this if the client asks for it specifically, because again, people may have issues with it. It could be the fact that you don't see the colors in the ties or the gray hair that's right there, or the fact that you can't even see the detail in the slacks really anymore. So again, only use that if the client asks for those kind of photos in specific. So we undid that, and this is the tonal curve section. This kind of adjusts it's like an adjustment graph in my opinion. You can adjust it to light and dark. So obviously if you do it too much, it looks blown out. So I would not recommend doing that. So what I normally do with this is I barely scratch the surface. So yeah, barely scratch the surface. Brings a little bit more light to the picture. And from there, you have your highlights that you can adjust. Then you can already see that it's adjusted both the lights and the darks for you, but you can even adjust this. Let's say if you wanted to just ignore this, you could come down here to the region section and you could just do it from here. I personally like to do it from here, but again, that's just a personal preference. HSL and color, let's say like if you want this, let's say if you want your photos to look more fall-like, again this is, and that's really when this photo was taken, it was taken in the fall. So as you can see, leaves in the background are starting to turn yellow. Or let's say if you want things to look more spring-like, more colorful, then you could do that option. But again, I really just ignore this section because I'm usually wanting to edit these photos in a certain length of time so I can make sure the client is happy and not take a super long time. So from there, the sharpening, sharpening is a pretty decent section to use, I should say. I don't really use it, but I know some people really rely on the sharpening section. So if you hit Alt or if you hit Option on Mac or Alt on PC, and if you do the amount, you'll notice it goes black and white, and it just kind of sharpens things. But again, I don't use it that much. And noise reduction, let's say if we'll zoom in real quick. And you can, let's say like if there's a lot of like noise in their faces, well, that's where noise reduction comes in. So you hit Alt or Option and you would do the luminance and it would take away that. But I do need to stress a word of caution with this, because if you do it too much, I'll show you here right now, it takes away all the detail in their face. Any lines or curves are usually gone in their face. I found that out the hard way. So just be very careful when you're using that option. So again, that's Alt or Option, and you just use the luminous button. And you can do the same thing with the color, Alt or Option, color. But again, I really just ignore that whole section. So we're going to zoom back out. And then this is one area that I always make sure I have enabled, and that is enable profile corrections. And then it will ask for, on the lens profile, it'll ask for the make of your camera. So I shoot with a Canon. And then right here it shows the kind of lens I used, the f-stops I was using, and with that you can do custom or you can do default. Usually when you do enable profile corrections, it goes to custom. So from here you can do, and this is another section, like let's say if you're taking a landscape shot and it looks, so we're gonna rotate this just a little bit to use it for an example. Like let's say it's a little off, so you can see that lines aren't straight. So what you would do is you would come over here, you can do rotate, and it just kind of rotates it. You don't have to do it right at like 1.0. You can even do like 1.1. But it looks pretty straight and dead on. But as you can see, there's still uneven lines, right, on both top and bottom. So what you would do is you come over here to the crop tool, and again it shows that white space on both the bottom and top, and even on the sides. So you would come over here and you would just crop it enough so it crops out those white spaces. And then same with this. Don't want to do it too much, obviously. Make sure you do it on all sides, just make sure it's all even. And there you go. It looks like there was never any problem whatsoever. And so from here, what I normally do is I just kind of look it over. I know that some people do this post crop options. I've used these in the past, but what post crop really is it's just putting those final little touches on your photo. So let's say if you'll notice that it starts getting darker and this becomes the focal point. Now I do want to issue a word of caution, because if you do it too much, well, that just looks bad. And if you do it too much on the positive side, again, it looks bad. Edit, undo, edit, undo. But again, if you want to do that, and then what's really cool is that you can change the midpoint. You can even change the feathering, so you can make it look very noticeable, or you can make it look not as noticeable. So it's really just a personal preference on that. I personally don't use the post crop very often. It just kind of depends on the situation. But that's just a really simple, easy tutorial for Lightroom. Excuse me. There's other things that you can do in this. There are so many different tools. Like this one, this is one thing I wanted to kind of stress real quick. This is the adjustment brush. So let's say if you feel like their faces are too dark, you can come over here, you can brighten up their faces, but make sure you do it on every single one. You don't want to leave out any of them. What you do to one, you must do to the other. So yeah, you can just kind of brighten up their faces. That's another option. It looks pretty decent. And then you have just other tools. You have the red eyes. So let's say if you're dealing with a family that has a toddler that's moving all over the place, and let's say if you're going through, you're editing their photos, you're having a great time, and then you see that they have red eyes in some of their family photos. Well, that's where the red eye correction comes in. And then spot. This is another great tool. It's a spot remover. And then there's about the crop tool. And then even if you come over here to tools, it gives you all sorts of different tools. The ones I mentioned, so crop, spot removal, red eye, graduated filter, radial filter, adjustment brush. We use that just barely. Guided upright, white balance selector, and fringe color selector. There's so many different options for tools that you can use. But really, in my opinion, this photo is done. That it looks fantastic. I know this client would be very happy with this photo once I give it to them. But let's say if you are ready to export, so you would go to library, you would have that photo, and let's say you want to export it. So you go to export. Let's say if you want to, you have so many different options here. You have an option over here where you can include your watermark down here. So you can do that, and then you have the custom ones you can make, or you can even do the simple ones that you can just type in your name. I don't do that unless it's for like a landscape shot, because some families don't really like having some random person's signature on their photos. So I just ignore that. But yeah, at this point, you are ready to export. So you would just export, and then it exports. So as you can see, it just exported. So yeah, that's the end of this tutorial. So this was just an easy tutorial on things that I didn't even know that I could even do with Lightroom when I first started in photography. These are tips and tricks that either I've taught myself, or that I've YouTubed from other YouTubers, or that I was shown how to do from that professor at Weber State, or from those mentors that I mentioned in my last video. Now I know that there are some who either cannot afford the Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop package that they offer, and I understand that. I'm a college student. I know that money is tight. And so the great thing about that is that Adobe already thought of that. They have the Lightroom app in both the App Store for iPhones and the Google Store for Android. So you can download that app, you can create a login, you can buy different little things in that to help your photos look better, and then you can share them on Instagram with your friends. I've done that in the past. Before I even started in photography officially, That's how I edited my photos, was using that Lightroom app. And then I would just export it over to my phone photos app, and then I would share it on Instagram. And it was a really fun way and a creative way to share some of my great shots with friends and with those who followed me on Instagram. So in essence, photo editing, it can be frustrating. It can be time consuming. And I'm sure there are times when people think, oh, I wish I had better things to do. And as I mentioned in that last video, there have been times when I've had to take a break from the editing process and walk away from those photos for a few days because I was getting frustrated, things weren't working the way I wanted them to, and then I would come back after a few days fully refreshed, feeling good about myself, and going through these simple steps that I showed you guys, and they really just came to life. So that was my goal of this video, is to kind of give you some ease and comfort, and to know that, look, photo editing is not easy, but here are some easy steps and an easy tutorial to show you guys how to edit these photos that you think are the greatest. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a fun thing to do when it comes to photography, is editing photos, because again, you get to bring your photos to life, and you get to see the vision of what you saw in your mind come to life on the computer screen or on the phone screen. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. If you're a new visitor, I hope you'll subscribe, turn on that bell so you'll get all my notifications, like the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Have a good one. Peace.